What's up guys, CJ here, and I want to talk a little bit about routing and how you come about routing, what you should be thinking about when you're considering early routes, and overall going into the game with a plan. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because when I look at replays of lower elo people, and even people in Challenger, Masters, Diamond, I see that sometimes they go into a game with a plan, but it's not a plan that's it's a plan that's okay, but there are higher percentage plays or higher percentage routes that can be taken. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're doing a type of route that you usually do, but there are available routes out there that'll give you a 2% increase in win rate percentage when you're taking that route, or like a 3% or a 5% edge. Or maybe you're just routing really, really bad. And then if you had just routed from, I don't know, the other side of the jungle to the side you're originally starting on, maybe that would give you more of an advantage. So going into this, you should have an idea of what tempo is, right? And tempo is basically the initiative you put on the map, right? It's the unseen stat that really guides the state of the game, right? Like when you look at what wins games, you can look at things like gold, right? You're going to get more golds, then that means you can carry more often. That means you're going to win more games. You can look at things like levels. If you're level 7 when their jungler's level 5, you have a level advantage, and maybe that's your indicator for winning the game. But tempo is something you can only really measure. There aren't stats for it in the client. In competitive, you would talk about like lane proximity, or percentage of camps stolen, or percentage of dragons taken, percentage of heralds taken, first turret taken percentage, time at which first turret is taken, right? All these things that offer initiative onto the map and proactivity. So going into this, I want to talk about the proactivity you can put into the game and the tempo you can put into the game, and how routing can influence that tempo situation. So how I'm going to be doing this is I'm just going to be looking at my own games, because if I were to look at some arbitrary person's games, you might not believe me, but if you look at my stream replays, you'll see that the way I route is entirely based on the team composition and how it'll function throughout the course of the game. So if we just go top down, right? Most recent game I played, and I haven't played too many games that game, or this season, but we look at the state of this game and we look at the champions available, right? So when we look at it, we see that it's Shaco versus Master E, right? And my bot lane is Twitch Janna versus Jhin Morgana. My mid lane is Ahri versus, in this case it was Jhin Lulu support and Morgana mid, and then Kayle top versus Camille, right? So when I look at this, immediately comes to thought, what is the push situation? And that's the first thing you think of when you think of tempo, right? Tempo is derived from the availability to make proactive plays on the map. And when your laner is able to push, that means they have first move initiative. And I talk about this a lot when I stream. But first move initiative basically means if you're the person shoving, that means you can leave the lane first, right? Because the other player has to decide between farming under turret and getting that CS and not coming to the situation or the scenario, or not getting the CS under turret and then coming to try and match the same movement that the initial lever of the lane tries to do, but then you're going to be missing CS under turret, right? So push initiative is really, really important in terms of tempo, because when you push first, that means you're forcing the enemy into a decision between getting CS under the turret or coming to the scenario. And so when we look at games in Champ Select and going into the game, and even retroactively, we can look at it in terms of who has the push potential and how does that impact the game. So when I look at bot lane, right, I see Twitch Janna versus Jhin Lulu, and I think, who has the shove advantage? All right, so when Twitch is level 1, Twitch typically takes E, right? And Jhin typically takes Q or W level 1 sometimes. So if we look at that scenario, and they're trading autos on the minions, right, trying to get level 2, Jhin will get level 2 more often than Twitch will, because Jhin has an AoE Q that has relatively short cooldown, while Twitch has E on a single minion, right? So that's going to lean towards shoving into your side of the map. In terms of supports, Janna versus Lulu, Janna wants to take E level 1, right? And Lulu typically takes E or Q level 1. Now see, if Lulu has option to take E or Q, if Janna takes E, it doesn't really help push the wave besides the fact that it gives increased AD. But that's marginal because Lulu has passive and can also shove the wave. And both supports are shoving, both are melee, both are ranged, and both are shoving equally. But Lulu has option to take Q. So if Lulu opts into taking Q, then that's going to shove in more than Janna can push out, right? So when we think about that situation, we expect Jin Lulu to shove in Twitch Janna a higher percentage of the time, right? So we know that our bot lane is going to get shoved in this game. When we look at the mid lane, it's Ahri versus Morgana. Morgana wants to take W level 1, Ahri can take Q level 1. And if you look at how Morgana W functions, sometimes you'll hit all 6 minions, but sometimes you won't be able to, and then Ahri can Q to shove. But if Ahri Qs to shove all 6 minions, Morgana will probably W in that area, and Ahri will have to move off that Tormented Soil area, and maybe she'll take a bit of harass that way. But in general, Ahri will be shoving in Morgana for the earlier levels because the Q cooldown and the relative mana usage is easier for the Ahri because you're going to hit 6 minions a higher percentage of the time, whereas Morgana, you're not going to hit all the minions. So our mid actually shoves out for the earlier levels, right? And then for top lane, it's Camille versus Kayle. Now this is a pretty simple scenario because Kayle is a quote-unquote range champion when E is activated. She's going to take E level 1. Camille is going to take Q level 1 or W level 1. Sometimes E, but that's generally not a good idea unless you're doing an invasion. And so Camille gets pushed in, right? Camille gets pushed in by Kayle. So now we've assessed the state of the lanes. We know that our top is going to get shoved in, our bot is going to get shoved in, and our mid is going to get shoved out, right? So when you think about scenarios like this, and I do this like almost immediately ASAP, but I'm doing the description to you guys. So this goes through my head in like 5 seconds, 10 seconds as I'm looking at the champions and the game. I'm like, all right, so if I wanted to play, I should be routing towards the side lanes, and you always route towards the side lane, right? Your mid lane, in this case, can consider roaming as well. Because when your mid lane has the first mover advantage because of shove, they can maybe roam with you to fight the jungler. They can maybe roam to the side lane as well to do a gank. So your mid lane has options. So we've gotten to this point in the game, or in our thought process, and we're saying, okay, so what can we do from here? Now, I want to touch upon just a side comment. I want to touch upon something that people can do, but I don't necessarily do in solo queue. So, let's say, for example, my mid and top lane are shoving, right? Let's say I had the Kayle and they had the Camille, and my mid and top are shoving. This gives me top lane invade initiative, and what that means is that if I choose to invade their topside jungle, I can expect, on average, and assuming my mid and top laner are playing correctly, that my mid laner will move first, and my top laner will move first, right? So we have initiative into their jungle. Because remember, my mid laner is putting their mid laner to decision on whether or not she should get the farm or come for the invasion. Similar to the top laner putting the opposing top laner into that position. So, in solo queue, I don't tend to do this, but for a macro game sense, you do have top lane invasion initiative, right? And this is typically true for mid lane. Whoever has a shove mid lane almost always has the invade initiative, because if you're invading and your mid lane's getting shoved in, like if you're invading the top side of the jungle and your mid lane's getting shoved in, that's bad, right? If you're invading the bot side jungle and your mid laner's getting shoved in, that's bad. You can't do invades like that. It's too risky. It generally is too risky, right? So generally one mid laner is always going to have the shove advantage against another. Now in this particular case, I don't have invasion initiative because both my side lanes shove in. So even if I do invade, I can only expect my mid laner to back me up and not my side laners to back me up. And so I'm personally not going to opt into that risk. I would rather opt into a scenario, if I were invading, which I don't in solo queue, but if I were invading in solo queue, playing a more standard champion like Graves or something, I would invade more often if both my mid and the side wave that I'm on, if I'm invading top jungle, then I want my top laner to have push initiative, and if I'm invading bot jungle, I want my bot laner to have push initiative, right? Alongside my mid laner. So that's just a side tangent of how push advantage translates to early game decision making. So in this decision making, I'm talking about choosing to invade that side, right? And obviously there goes into a lot of macro sense, like, oh, maybe the enemy jungler wants to start that side to decrease the amount of camps that I steal and stuff like that. But for the main purposes of this video, we had to establish this idea of tempo and this idea about push initiative to talk about routing, right? So because I know, in this game in particular, right, I know that my top lane gets pushed in, my bot lane gets pushed in, and my mid lane pushes out. This makes it very, very clear on what my plan is. Well, I have two decisions, and Master Yi almost always has one decision. So what are my decisions, right? You want to gank the side lanes that shove into you, right? That's just very, very clear. So I have to decide which side lanes shove into me. Well, I think about optimality in terms of shoving, right? Can I get kills, and when can I get them? So for this example, let's say I do a top to bottom route, right? Let's say I do, I think in this game we were blue side. So let's say I did top down, right? I did blue, wolves, red, bot gank, right? And then we're ganking the bot lane. Twitch is level 2, Jan is level 2, and Jin is level 2, Lulu is level 2. So is this the most optimal situation that I can do this gank in? And for that, I thought the answer was no. You can do that gank. There's nothing wrong with doing that gank. But in terms of optimality, we can think of it in terms of skills. So what does Twitch have at level 2? Well, Twitch can have W and E or Q and E, right? Most often it'll be W and E. What does Janna have? Janna had E level 1. She's probably going to pick up Q level 2, right? So do I want to do a gank when I'm level 3 bot, when my bot laners are level 2? Or do I want to wait until they're level 3 when they have more resources? Because the Janna W slow is a instrumental resource for ganks. The Twitch Q not so much. Similarly, if I wanted to gank top lane, what point should I do it, right? So do I want to go, Raptors, red, blue top and say, okay, I'm going to gank top at 2. What does my Camille have at 2? Well, if she picked up W level 1, she might have W and E. She won't have the Q damage. Or if she picked up Q level 1, she only has E and doesn't have the W sweep slow, right? And in this particular game, my decision making was, okay, I'm going to wait for the side laners to pick up level 3, and then I'll gank for them when they're level 3, right? And then until then, I'll be routing around mid lane. And let me go into depth about this a little bit more. So instead of doing buff camp buff for camp buff buff, in that case the camp is the Raptors, I'm going to do I decided to gank top this game, right? Because I thought there was higher kill potential in a Camille lane than a Janna lane, right? That's pretty reasonable, even though you can get 2 kills bottom. So I decided to route top this game. But I want to gank top when Camille's level 3, right? So typically Camille's level 3 when I'm level 4. So my path this game was Raptors, red, wolves, gromp, blue, top, right? I clear 5 camps, I'm level 4, and Camille's level 3. And that was the route that I chose to take. And so I can take that route because I decided that Camille level 3 is valuable or is worth waiting for instead of Camille level 2. So this situation might not occur for other champions, right? So let's say, for example, you have a Fiora top in this case as well, instead of the Camille. Let's say I have a Fiora top, right? Well, I think of Fiora's level 1. Fiora takes Q level 1, right? Fiora is going to get shoved in by the Kayle because she's a melee champion and Kayle's are ranged. And then Fiora picks up W at 2, right? So we have to value the last skill or the third skill of Fiora. And we think of Fiora E, and it's just damage, right? But when we think of Camille, it goes like QEW and WCC. So in that case, the level 3 gank for Camille is stronger than the level 3 gank for Fiora because you should be opting to gank for Fiora level 2 because her level 3 is not that strong. So in that case, if I was ganking for my top lane Fiora, I would do Raptors red, blue top. So a lot of thought came into this discussion, and you have to remember that they have an opposing jungler as well. So their opposing jungler, Master Yi, I talked about him having one clear strategy. And his clear strategy should be gank mid, and if I'm not ganking mid, where's Shaco going to be? Because if Master Yi knows that his side lanes are going to push out, right? Then he should be ganking the mid lane. When should he be ganking the mid lane? When Morgana has Q. When does Morgana have Q? At level 2, right? Does Morgana's shield actually matter? Not that much. Maybe it protects against charm, but Master Yi kind of wants to gank mid at level 2 because we've established that the Ahri shoves in the Morgana. But which side is he going to route from, right? Mid lane is the pretty much neutral side of the game, so you can route top to bottom or bottom to top and still have similar influence on mid. So Master Yi's clear decision should be, okay, where is Shaco going to go? And I'll route towards the same side as Shaco, right? So if Master Yi thinks I'm going to route bottom to top, then the Master Yi is going to do his blue, wolves, red, and then either look to counter gank me top if he thinks I'm going for level 2 with the Camille, or gank mid there at level 2 when Morgana's level 2 and he's level 3. And that should be his route. And if I haven't ganked by then, maybe he'll do Raptors and Krugs and then counter gank me top, right? And I believe Master Yi did do such route, blue, wolves, red, Raptors, Krugs, and we had some fight at Krugs or something like that. So if you understood what I'm talking about, if you understood, number 1, tempo, how the lane shoves, and how that impacts pushing and pulling lanes. Number 2, how that impacts the laners, because certain laners are going to do better when they're getting shoved in, because that'll get jungle pressure, and when they shove out, they won't get jungle pressure, and they'll only get match and counter gank pressure. Number 3, you have to consider the skills of the champion, right? The skills of level 3 Camille versus level 3 Fiora. And 4 is your decision making as the jungler. How you're going to route. Are you going to level 3 gank? Are you going to level 4 gank? What levels do you need them to be for the gank to be efficient? So I want to talk just one more time so that you guys get this understanding, right? And we're just going to look at this this game I have here, and we're going to come to a consensus or decision. So in this game, if you want to pause here, you can pause here and think about what I would do and what Nidalee would do, and then come to the consensus. So pause right now, and then unpause when you're done. Okay, so what I would do in this game, I would say, okay, Lucian and Zilean. When does Zilean have maximum CC? When he has all 3 spells, right? Because you can double bomb Q for CC, and then you can E for slow. When does Camille have CC? At level 3. In this scenario, Camille was our mid laner. But, man, maybe I should have said that before you paused. Anyway, so in this case, Camille needs level 3. Optimally, you would like Camille to be level 3. And then, of course, Lissandra, you would like Lissandra to be level 3 a majority of the time, because all 3 of her spells are important. E is gap closer, W is CC, Q is slow. On the other hand, Ezreal versus Janna. Ezreal's level 3 is not that impactful. Ezreal's strong at 2. But Janna typically wants level 3. Right? Akali, you're almost never ganking the... In this case, it was a mid lane Akali. Wow, I should have really thought this out a little bit more before telling you guys to pause. Anyway, Akali was the mid laner this game. Or actually, I'm dumb. Vlad was the mid laner this game, and Akali was the top laner this game. Okay? So if I'm Akali, when do you want to gank for Akali as Nidalee? Almost never. It really doesn't make that much of a difference. I guess Akali picks up some maneuverability with her W at level 3. Maybe at level 2 if she takes that level 2. But in general, you don't really want to gank for the Akali lane because if Lissandra skills E level 2, you're almost always going to get away. So Nidalee doesn't really want to do that. And Vlad, well, Vlad takes Q, E, and then W. And then that'll typically translate into a little bit of slow sometimes against the melee Camille. So if I'm playing Shaco, which I am, I want to gank at level 3 generally. And if I'm playing Nidalee, I want to gank at level 3 generally. There's no level 2 situations except maybe bottom lane, but you'd be ganking without Janna W. So off the bat, I think both me, Shaco, and Nidalee are going to be taking level 3 routes. Now, the question is, where are we going to route? And here's where we look at push initiative, right? You'll say, okay, well, if we look at bot lane, Zilean versus Janna, we look at it and say, okay, well, Zilean can bomb, Zilean can AoE and shove, and Janna doesn't shove as quickly as Zilean bombs, clearly, unless she uses a tornado, but she won't really do that. Ezreal versus Lucian. Lucian can Q almost 6 minions sometimes, and then Ezreal Ezreal has the auto Q, doesn't shove as quickly as Lucian. So we're going to say our bottom lane shoves out. When we look at mid lane, it's Camille versus Vladimir. So that's a clear shove in because Vladimir has the range advantage. Camille does have W sweep, but Vlad does have E at level 2, while Camille has W at level 2, or sometimes level 1. But because of the range advantage, Camille often is going to get harassed out of the melee creeps, and that'll be shoving in. So our bot shoves out, our mid shoves in. Top lane, it's pretty clear cut. Lissandra shoves in Akali. Akali has some wave clear with her E, but if she goes into wave, she's going to get harassed. Additionally, Lissandra almost has a free shove with her passive with her Q. So top shove out. So I have a very clear idea for the game, right? I'm saying my top shoves out, my bot shoves out, my mid shoves in. I want to gank mid. When do I want to gank mid? Level 3, when Camille is maximizing. Okay, so which side of the jungle do I start? Well, I can start either side of the jungle. Now, I'm going to consider which side Nidalee is going to start. So Nidalee looks at her lanes and is like, okay, do I really want to gank for the top lane Akali versus Lissandra when Akali has no CC? Not really. So I'm probably going to gank bot lane where Janna does have some CC. When am I going to... So I'm going to route top to bottom. Again, your mid lane consideration into this is minimal almost. But Nidalee knows that she wants to gank the top lane pushing in or the bot lane pushing in, right? And when she's deciding between the top lane pushing in and the bot lane pushing in, she should consider the fact that the bot lane has a higher gank percentage, or it's going to work out more often because of Janna's CC, right? So if I'm Nidalee and I'm red side, I'm going to go Raptors, red, Wolves, Gromp, blue, or blue Gromp, right? Because Nidalee needs mana sometimes. And being that I know what Nidalee should be doing, and I have the option of routing bottom to top or top to bottom, I'm going to choose to route top to bottom, right? I'm going to go blue, Gromp, Wolves, Raptors, red, and then either mid at level 3 when my Camille's level 3, or bot to counter gank the Nidalee, right? So I really shouldn't have told you guys to pause. That's my bad. I'm not going to remake this video, but what you have to consider, if we're looking at it in a line-by-line process, is number 1, when do we want to gank each lane? Number 2, who has the shove advantage? And how does that impact where I should move relative to where their jungler should move? 3, if it's a level 2 gank, I should be doing it for some champions more than others based on skills. And if it's a level 3 gank, I should be routing for 5 camps instead of 3. And number 4, always, always, always consider what the enemy jungler is going to do. Because even if you're thinking about yourself and you're thinking about where you're routing and where it's going to be right, you have to consider that the enemy jungler could be smart enough to know that you're doing this certain amount of route. And similarly, it's a zero-sum game. You can think the same thing of them. So that was a lot to take in. If you understood even a little bit of what I was talking about, that's good, because these concepts are sometimes even foreign to some Master and Challenger North American players, which surprises the hell out of me. I hope to be playing a couple more games. I was allowed to play more games this week because it's my spring break, but when school starts up again next week, I'll probably only be streaming again, once a week usually, and that's why I play so few games. But if you look at my Twitch VODs, I'm sure you'll find that these are the considerations I take into every game, and most of the time I'm going to do it. And then there's nothing wrong with also going top to bottom if you think that or bottom to top if you think that the kill potential on the Akali is higher, and then you just warn your bot lane of what you think Nidalee is going to do. So thank you for watching. Feel free to follow me on twitch.tv/LolChineseJester, Facebook lol Chinese Jester right below. Definitely subscribe here on YouTube, Chinese Jester, and lol Chinese Jester, or lol you matter on Twitter. Bye. Thanks for watching.